Hey guys, Jason Reese here again with Focus Creative Studio. Today we're going to jump in and work on some 3D modeling in SketchUp. I use SketchUp Pro 2020. In this particular session, we're going to go through how I model and create the templates and files for HO scale inserts that work with the DPM Modular series from Woodland Scenics, the windows, the doors, and how I create the base template and additional files. We'll go through, again, that base template. We'll go through creating a solid brick insert file, and then we'll also go through one or two of the options that I use for pipe through connections, drain connections, maybe a louver connection. We'll look at how we can drop those in as a simple copy paste from some older files that have already been created that print well and work. And then I'll also go through and we'll generate a brand new window insert specifically for the rectangular series windows. I've already done the arch tops. So in this, we'll jump into the rectangular series and add that to my offerings. After I get done with all that, we'll go through a session with 3D Builder. I'm going to do this in pieces where I export those models, one or two of those models through 3D Builder so that you can see it actually flip faces when it's correcting a problem. You don't always catch all of them in the modeling. It doesn't show up in SketchUp. So that corrects your STL file. We'll go through that. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to take the common brick file. That's just the standard brick insert, full brick. And we're going to run that through Lychee Slicer. And I'll add all my supports. I'll show you my support settings that I have set up and what works and prints well. I'll show you the support structure trees that I create that allow us to get good, great prints without warping. Because that's a critical issue when you're trying to work with flatter prints. So with all that being said, that's the goal, to cover each one of those topics. And then at the end, what I'll do is probably throw up some finished print images as those come off the printer, because I want to take one or two of the new files like the windows, and I'll throw some brick in there too, but show those prints at the end as just kind of an image montage so that you can see the models that we've created and then how they translate to actual 3D printed resin models that you can use for your HO scale DPM models. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so the first thing that we want to make sure that we do when we jump into SketchUp, at least this is how I model. I jump in, set my model information, and set the units to decimal, millimeters, and then I set my precision at 4 points for display, and then 2 points for the area and volume at 2 points. That way you're working in the metric system. Our printers are set up to work in metric, so it's good to get used to working that way. So that's just how I have that set up. So I'll close out of that. And then I have a drawing that I've prepared that basically is a caliper measurement of the insert opening that we're going to model today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just start creating that base template. So I'll just start with a line. I'm going to put it right. Actually, I don't even do that. So if I select the tape measure tool, I can select on the axis and then offset that. My total width is 12.3. So I want to do half of that, 6.15. And we're going to zoom into that. That's how tiny these models are. So 6.15. And then I'll go ahead and set my baseline right there. And the height to the spring point is 25.5. So again, selecting my tape measure, 25.5. And then the midpoint is 26.12. And again, these were all measured with a set of digital calipers. And then we're just going to come up here, create this. I'm going to use a 3-point arch. I'll use 2 point. Grab both ends and then it'll go to the middle and then bounce right there. So now we have, that's basically the size of the opening that goes into the models, the module pieces. So this is really the top template, the most important piece. Now what we want to do, I don't need these anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and erase all these guidelines. And I'll just go ahead and save this file, save as, and we're going to go down here and I'm going to go ahead and, I've done this before, but I want to go ahead and override this because we're just basically creating everything from scratch. So save that. Yeah, we'll override that. I'm good with that. All right, so now I've got depth to this. I have a portion of the base that slides into the insert, which is 1 millimeter tall. So I'll push pull. I'll pull this up 1 millimeter, 1 enter. And then I've got a portion that allows it to sit flush to the back of the face. There's a lip that surrounds it. So we're going to go to the bottom here, and I want to extend that out. So if I use my offset tool, I'll come in here, select inside, it'll grab a boundary, and then we're going to go ahead and basically offset this whole piece a total of 1 millimeter. So that creates a boundary edge. I want to go ahead and reverse this face now while I'm thinking about it. White is the front, blue is the back. So when you're creating solids in SketchUp. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and pull this piece down, 0.6. This is based on another model. I'll bring this one flush to it. And then I want to bring this down. I want to hit the control key and add a lip here, or add a surface here, and bring this down 1. Now the reason I'm doing this is that 0.6, this is a rectangular lip that stays consistent. I'm going to bevel this piece here. I'll go ahead and I can do that now. Shouldn't have any issues with that. So I'm going to use Frito round corner, sharp corner bevel tool. I'm going to set the offset to 1. That'll give me a perfect 45. And then I'm going to select this outside edge all the way around the model. And then hit enter. And now what I've got is a nice, clean, outside tapered edge that allows me to drop supports anywhere I want along the outside here. Easy to clip off and remove when the modeler gets a 3D print that I've created for assembly. So just you learn some things when you dig through enough of these to try and make things as simple as possible for the modeler. So this is the bottom. The slight arch is at the top. And again, all these dimensions we're done with calipers right off the sample pieces that I have. So one of the things you want to think about when setting these up is how your model sits against the build plate, drains. Those things are important to remember at the beginning. Don't develop a model and say, oh, how am I going to support this? How's it going to print and drain when it's going through the process? I think that's what causes a lot of people hurdles, unfortunately. So I'm going to go ahead and push pull this flush with that face, and then we're gonna offset this while I'm thinking about it. I think that's 1.5. Let's see, 1.5. Yeah, that works. And then I'm going to push this back up 1. And that puts me back flush with that face up here, and I've got more up on top. So it's all about developing these thicknesses. And then I've got a system that I use. I've rotated over, and we're working on the bottom of the model now, where I've got 2 primary, basically attachment pads in the center of this piece that allows me to drop anchor points for the supports. Oops. And so what I want to do is I'm just going to separate that. This bridge here in the middle gives me a place to anchor some supports right there in the middle of the model that just provides some stability as you're printing. The goal is to prevent the warping, and so that's just what we're looking at here, is how do we create some anchor points and develop a system that keeps this piece perfectly flat while it's printing and curing. And the second part of this is my landing pads. I've got 2 landing pads that are 6 millimeters in diameter, so 3. And that will sit flush with this. I'll get one over here. And I'm just grabbing the midpoints of these so that the things are symmetrical. And 3 again. Erase my guidelines. Flush. And then I'm going to go ahead, these are 0.6. I'm going to go ahead and bevel these as well. Just, it cleans things up when I'm trying to place supports and prevent islands. So we know that this is actually 1 millimeter thick, so we'll keep this at 1. And if I just select inside that, it will grab that whole piece. Now those pads are part of the model. I can drop a heavy support here and a heavy support here, and then that becomes the main trunk of my supports, where I develop a tree-like system that goes off and grabs the rest of these. And you'll see that when we get to the model. Now the second thing we want to think of is, we know this is the part hanging off the build plate. We know this is the part down here that's hanging in the resin every time. So it drops down each time and sits in the resin against the FEP. The light comes on, cures the next layer. That's happening down here. So then it raises up. So anytime we have a lip like this, that resin is going to have a tendency to pool. So we're going to go ahead and put a bevel on this edge. And it creates, sometimes it does this, it creates this odd, it likes to close things off. It creates this odd geometry where it closes things off. And did it? Okay, yeah, so I had an extra line in there. So I drew that in the wrong spot. I should be able to erase. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up here and just finish this geometry. Since I grabbed the wrong rectangle is what I did. So now we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this here too. Sometimes this is a hidden geometry when it uses the bevel corner. And all I've done is basically solidify the geometry so it's no longer hidden. So like this, there's no hard edge, no hard edge. The model still sees it, but it can complicate things with reverse faces if you haven't modeled enough and you're new to this. But anyhow, so now as this pulls out of the resin each time, it's going left to right. So this is dipping in the resin, pulls out to the right. That resin is constantly draining off these surfaces. So I've gotten into a habit of, with these models, also creating one just up here off the build plate. And this is really only because things tend to, when it gets cold here, that resin isn't quite as viscous. And so those first initial layers, the resin can tend to pool. And so I give it a place to start draining in through the middle of this model immediately. So that way I'm hopefully not dealing with it. I'm just push pulling right down. Let me orient this so you can see it a little better. Push pull that down, can erase that face because it's all the same surface. I can erase these guidelines. I'm gonna go ahead and erase this corner. Oh, don't want to do that. I want to push pull that to that edge because now it's pushed it through, and then I'm gonna erase this. This geometry is not needed. I should have and now I can reconnect. Oh, I didn't grab that one. Give me a second here. Bear with me. I erased an extra line in there. Go ahead and connect the dots here. Erase that line and now have clean geometry that drains through. So that takes care of the top. So the resin, as it's pulling out of the vat, would always drain down through. Here it's going to drain off this edge and drip. And then this one down here, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to drop a bevel on this. 0.6. And I've got that funky geometry again. Allow me to grab it this time. That's good. I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. Just since this geometry is a little unique and it looks like it bevels out there, which that's good. So this gives me a point anywhere along here that I can drop those supports in and get a good solid support contact point for the model. And then that way, this is always draining. Resin's always draining off this model. So that basically covers how we set up a template to allow lots of anchor points on the bottom of any one of the pieces that we develop. A nice clean top surface face that now we can model on. And when I get into the slicing program, what you're going to see is that this is face up on the slicer. So we're always pulling the face we want the most and highest detail to the top of the print. So anything you put on the bottom can tend to have pimple marks because of how the resin system works. And it's dropping in, pulling out, dropping in, pulling out. That resin isn't always flowing completely away. So when the light kicks on, sometimes there's a little bit of light bleed that cures some resin on the bottom of your prints. So we just want to avoid that hurdle with the parts that we want to be pristine. They face up on the build plate. So that's what you have here. So we'll go ahead and save this. That's saved as the rectangular base template. Now, the next piece we're going to do is going to be the one that really sets everything up for the brick infill. So as we get moving on that, I'll pull in another file here in a second and show you how I do that. But this is the base template you want to have set up. So that took us, what, 10 minutes? 10, 15 minutes here at most to get that set up and moving. So with that, let me do a save as. And I'm going to go ahead. I've got other files in here. I want to follow the same nomenclature that I used in my Archtop series. So my full will be RECT-01 to match the Archtop RECT-01. But for this particular case, since I've already modeled one of these, I'm going to set this up as RECT-01, and I'm just going to label it R for revision, because I'm going to do things a little bit differently with how I set this up for the video. So with that, save that as. Now we have a clean file that we can start working on the brick piece. All right, now that we've got this template set up and ready to go, we want to go ahead and import another model. We don't need to recreate everything from scratch on the brick. I've covered how to do that in another video, how to create HO scale brick. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and watch that video so that you can see this. So I'm just going to pull this model that's already in. I'm going to select this, edit, copy, get out of that block, edit, paste in place, and now we're going to move, control, select this endpoint in the group, come over here, copy it to this endpoint. Now we've got that set up. So now I can go ahead and delete that, and I've got the beginnings of the brick set up here on our rectangular insert brick template. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of these that are not full brick, just so that we can recreate the geometry there where we need to. I'm going to show you how to copy paste up. I think I went through this on how I created the HO scale brick as well, but just grab both of those, move, control, endpoint, we'll go ×3. That gets me up to the top there. Same thing on this side. I'm hitting control to click on both of those and select them. Move, endpoint, control, endpoint ×3. Those should all be lined up and good. So now I want to take these, one on each side, move, make sure it grabs that endpoint, control to copy it. We'll need one of those. And then we've got these two. And again, this is just taking advantage of models you've already built, plugging them into new models, and that's the whole beauty behind setting these up as templates and then copy and paste and do that kind of stuff. So it just makes your life a lot easier. So this dimension here, let's measure it real quick. Let's just see what it is. 0.4. You're just not really gonna see. You're not really gonna see it. I'm going to go ahead and model another brick in here just so that I have it done on both sides. But this one's going to end up being a sliver, but it's good just to show the modeling process so that you can see how to cut through, how we work with these pieces across the top and get those set up for our template. So the next thing we want to do, I got all my bricks in place. I'm going to come in, I'm just going to select this one line at the top. I'm going to move, copy it up. So remember, Control, you saw how it moved. Control creates a new copy of the line. Once it's going on the blue axis, hit Shift, and we want to align that with the top of the bricks. So now what I've got is a line along the top of our arch here that allows us to have a slicing plane to work with as we go into each one of these models. So I'll start with this one here on the end. Double click to get in. You'll see that it selects all those. This is a component. So I want to escape out of that, right click, make unique, and I'll go ahead and grab all these now that I'm seeing if that's going to happen. We want to make all these unique. Otherwise, when I make that change, it would have changed all of these. That's the beauty behind components. I'll go through that in a different video. But now this one's unique, so I selected it, doesn't pick up any of those others. We are just going to draw a line from here to there. I'm not even going to try and pick up that joint in the middle. It just cause all kinds of problems down the road, and I don't want to deal with that. So we want to push this down to this level, and then we're going to create planes. That line is there, sorry. So come over here where we intersect here, intersection along the blue axis. We want to come up to our line. That line is hidden, or it's not hidden, but it's a shadow because it's not part of this group. So we come over and we're basically just closing off this and creating a plane. Do the same thing on this side from this edge. I hold shift down when I hit that blue axis. Up. Come down. Didn't grab it and finish it yet. Boom. So now I've got all my planes done. I'm gonna rectangle window everything, come down, edit, intersect faces with selection. Now everything that I just modeled here, I don't need. But those planes slice through it that allow me to cut that, and now I've got those planes that have created the finishing faces for that particular model. So nice clean geometry, even though it's a little odd, but now it's clean and will print just fine. So double click, get out of that one, go into this one. All right, so this is still a component, even though I made it unique. Let's try this again, make unique. Yep, so now we're good. So similar thing here, we see the line that comes across the top of this brick. That's our guideline. We want to come over, and just for ease of geometry, again, you're never going to see this. This is so small, and this goes in the top of that arch. You're going to be, you're going to be painting this, you're going to be weathering this. This just never gets seen. So instead of trying to mold or model this joint in, I'm just skipping it because of the size, the scale of the model we're working in. So straight line, push pull, come down to there, and we want to do the same thing on this side. So we're straight up with our vertical to create these planes. Grab that piece, got to kind of look down in here, grab this one. That plane is there. This one's going to get sliced from here, so grab that blue axis. And I'm aligning with that top, so I want to come over here and align there. Oops. This one might fight me. Let's see. Might have to get creative here. How are we going to solve this? Because it doesn't like what I'm doing. Let's see if I can get the bottom. I'll do the bottom. Does not like it. So I'm going to draw a line up here just so I have a reference point, because I'm going to delete this. And we're gonna try it this way. Complete the geometry. Aren't you just being fun? All right, so what we want to do is we're gonna finish this plane, but we want to be just above the beveled surface here without trying to close off. Still want to do it. This is crazy. Does not. Okay, well, now you're really. Seriously, now it's created geometry that there it goes. Now it's created the plane. That's a lot of work. This is the one thing I don't like about SketchUp. I'm not glad it popped up, but I'm glad it popped up. That plane is complete. We had to work through it way differently than we should have had to. But because these pieces are so small, we're working in metric, and we're at the 0.2 of a millimeter accuracy setting, it just SketchUp wants to snap to it, and there's probably a setting somewhere, honestly, I just don't know what it is, that would allow me to fix that. So if you guys actually know what that is and you see this video, man, drop that in the comments below, because that happens to me every now and then, drives me crazy. Back to creating the slices, intersect faces with selection. Now I'm back to where I was with the other one. This window and all this outside geometry here, we're going to delete it, don't need it. Right, so that's now, all that's clean. See, it filled all this in. That's what we wanted. Just had to go about it the hard way. So now that one's done. And the unique piece is that that bevel falls along the arch on the top. So it's nice having some ability to go in and manipulate these things. It helps you with other models as well. So this one I can actually mirror. This one I'm not sure I can. We'll try, we'll see what happens. But this one, I'm gonna move, control, I'm gonna grab the midpoint of the brick directly 2 courses below, over to the midpoint here, and then I'm gonna right click, flip along, components red, and that will drop it right in place in the same location on the opposite side. Can't quite do that with this one. So let me see if I can delete this and draw the geometry across that allows me to do this. So move, control. I'm gonna take this one off the edge a little bit. Stay on the red axis. Right click, flip along, components red. Not sure if this is gonna work or not, but then we're gonna try and move it to that intersection. We'll see if the geometry works for us. Sometimes it wants to snap to a different location. And there you go. So that one has been flipped. Geometry is good. And we can erase that. So now we've got those 2 pieces. Now all we have left is this one. We're gonna get into it. And we're gonna draw a line straight up from here. Oops. Get on that blue. Make sure you always stay on the blue. Boom. And then we're gonna come straight across red. Hold that shift down to hold it in place, then drag it. You might not, it's not gonna let me. So we're gonna go intersection, we're gonna go up blue here, and then we'll connect them. Shift, blue. Now I can connect this, come down below. Connect this to finish off our plane. And now, make this unique. Edit. Oh, I messed this up. My bad, my bad. Okay, so we want to undo what we just done. We need to make this unique first. Otherwise, it copies that into all my other components. So, good thing to be mindful of. I didn't catch it as we were going. So make unique. Now jump in, do what we just did. Don't you just wish modeling went perfect every time? You didn't have to jump through hoops sometimes. Make life easy, wouldn't it? Been modeling in SketchUp for a long time, and I still have these hurdles that I try to go too fast is my problem. I'm not paying attention. So all that's selected, edit, intersect faces with selection. Now I come in. I'm going to use the eraser tool. Get rid of this outside. Again, we didn't follow the precise geometry of the segments. Not needed up top. Don't make things harder on yourself. Enough hurdles we gotta jump through sometimes to make this work. So that geometry is clean, done. Get out of that. Escape, get out of that. Now I can delete this. Delete. Now you are set with a base brick file insert for the rectangular series for the DPM modular pieces in HO scale. That's it. That's all it takes to get there. So now what we'll do is we're going to save this. That's rectangular 01R. I revised it because I did things a little different than my original. We're going to use this one. And that way, I'll take this. We'll do, maybe we'll do one of the pipe. Let's do one of the pipes and then the louvers. Let's do the louvers. We'll do those two. Those are good examples. So again, I did save that, but we want to do a save as, because it's already been saved. And let's see which pipe do I want to do. Let's just do arc 05. So we're going to do rect, RECT-05. That way, this model will mimic the arc 5 model, just for consistency for me. Save that. And I'm going to open up, import the arc 5 model. It's super simple. And then I want to rotate this. 90 degrees. Just keep it while it's selected. Everything stays fine. You know, you're not going to end up messing anything up. You're good. All right. So now what we want to do, we want to copy that. I set all this up as groups when I do this because it makes this part of it so much faster and easier. So edit, copy, edit, paste in place. And remember, we're just going to M for move, grab a corner on that model, bring it to a corner on this model, and done. It's okay that this geometry overlaps. I'd set these up, I'd cut these bricks, I'd done a bunch of stuff, but with the way these print, we've got gaps here for masonry joints that you just don't see it. At least I'm not seeing it as much. So that's literally that simple. So come out, we'll just select this, delete it. That is rectangle 5 done. Save that. And because I left all the geometry the same in this, I can go ahead and save as. Saved it. Save as. What's our louver number here? We're going to do the 09. So we're going to make this 09. And I'm going to delete that. All my brick comes right back. I'm going to import the 09 file. I want to jump in. And these are a little bit unique, so I need to make sure I select all of this one. And we're going to have to erase some bricks. We will. That's why I picked this one, because we're going to have to modify this one. You'll see in a second, because all these bricks will pop through. So we want to edit. We want to copy. Edit. Paste in place. And we're going to move over to this one. Now I want to make this a group collectively. So edit, make group. So now this is its own piece altogether. And now I can come in the brick file. A little tedious, but you're going to come in, you're going to delete all these bricks, because otherwise it's going to print them. And I actually have this set up to be a nice file that prints these louvers. You can see this bevel on the edge, and it's kind of a nice clean print on the edge. And so I'm going to show you how we can modify brick files here. A little tedious, that's all right. Bear with me. Won't take me too long here to get rid of these. But then I'm going to show you how we're model these others in, because I'm going to pull those from this file here that slide underneath this louvered edge. This is the beauty behind creating these bricks as a modular piece and starting to develop these options one by one. Is I can just pull them when I come in to develop this set. So now all the tops, those bricks are fine. They slide underneath the louver. These bricks down here are fine. They slide under the louver. One option would be cool would be to just drop in a row lock under here. So maybe that's another option that I can look at. Instead of the running bond I have here. So, all right, so we want to come in to this brick file. Like I said, these are already cut, so I can control, I'm going to select all of them at one time instead of doing a copy paste function. Once I selected one, if I just get them all done at the same time. Okay, so shift will delete that. I'm holding control down to select these with the plus button. Done. All of them on that side, all of them that side. Hit edit copy. Now, escape to get out of everything. And you want to come in, you want to get into this brick file. See, that's a different file that we're going to delete here in a second. This is the brick file. So we want to hit edit. The brick group, paste in place. Those are all there, duplicated. We want to move them. Boom, done. See, now that's all one group at the moment. Just the way it was set up, I'm going to come in and then delete this all together, and now we should be good. So there is a nice clean louver. And again, remember, this is on the build plate, this is on the bottom, so it's angled. If you watch my cursor, it's angled 45 degrees up that way. So these nice thin fins will actually print. They are only, I think they're 0.1 millimeter. So, but these are at the edge of that. These are, I think, 0.4 millimeters thick. Yeah, 0.4 millimeters thick, and that prints in HO scale. So that's like an inch and a half, something. So now you have the louvered file done. Save that. Just double check. All right, so we did the base brick file. We did one pipe, through pipe connection fitting file. We did the louvered file. So that covers us for some of the base options. I'm gonna go ahead and jump over into the template again. And that way, that's a one. So let's go back to the base template, open that up, and we're gonna do File, Save As. We're gonna do a window. And I want to check and make sure. So my window was 13. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do RECT-13. And I'm going to pull that file in, and we're going to go through developing a similar steel window file, maybe with a steel beam underneath that shallow arch support is one option. And we can see how that goes. All right, so as we set up the window, let me go ahead and import that previous window file. Nope, don't want to do that. Give me a sec, import, Arc 13. So we just want to use this as kind of a base so that I can go through dimensions and how things work that I've set up. I'm gonna rotate that, 90. I'm just gonna line it up a little bit better. All right, so we have our blank template here, and then we have the window from the full arch top series here. And so real quick, these are dimensions for mullions that I have personally decided are perfect for me. Everybody has different means and methods per se when it comes to 3D printing. I know the 3D printing guidelines, what prints well. Can you push the limits? Sure. But my goal is consistent quality prints every time without having to deal with failures over and over and over again. So mullion widths, 0.5 millimeters. You can do 0.4. I've done it successfully. I don't particularly care for being super fragile and delicate when I'm trying to remove the supports, because I have to put supports all along the back side of these mullions to keep them from warping and pulling. And I've got the supports down to either 0.3 or 0.4 on the contact point so that they can slip off, get clipped off with nippers, real simple, and then lightly sanded from the back side, and you won't see it. You can do 0.4, like I said. I'm not going to do it. It's 0.5. It works for me. The prints come out consistently great every time. I've set the depth on my mullions to 1.2. There are plenty of other people out there doing 0.6, 0.8. Again, this comes down to support placement, consistency, and getting a good quality print every time. Is it overscale? Sure, because in HO scale, 0.3 millimeters is basically an inch. So these would be 4 inches deep for what would be considered an old steel frame. And old steel frames are usually about an inch, inch and a quarter by 2 to 2.5 inches, which is pretty thin. So the width is actually pretty close. I mean, at 0.5 millimeters, that puts you at 2 1/4. No, I'm sorry, 1 3/4 inches wide. So that's acceptable to me. The original DPM windows, the mullions are 1 millimeter wide. So we're half the thickness on the windows, and we can get good quality prints. So the first thing we're gonna do here, we know what 0.4, 1.2, I'm just gonna leave this one in here for a bit. We're gonna come up to our offset tool and grab that. We're gonna come in 0.5 because that's gonna be our outside frame. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come to the bottom. Remember we did all this? I'm gonna delete. Actually, I want to draw a rectangle in around this whole perimeter first. Can't do that, can I? So, all right, so that's all tied together. I bet I can separate it there. Gotta find out where I didn't close that geometry. All right, so now that one's separated. And this one, oh, I've got that curved edge, that's why. I'm just trying to separate the geometries a little bit here as we get rolling, because I want to stretch this down through without having to recreate this whole piece. But I think it's going to be easier, honestly, because see, their bottom's completely different. We may just have to, there we go. So that's good, keeps my whole outside perimeter, but now I've got some of this in here. I want to delete this geometry. None of this is needed. And I'm gonna extrude, push pull this perimeter down from the top on this. You'll see just in a second. So I'm cleaning this up instead of starting all over from scratch. Cleaning things up here to get ready to extrude this top down. Now I want to push pull this, hit control to add, come down, and grab that edge. Grab that edge. There you go. Now I've got a clean piece. I can go ahead and delete the middle. I can reverse this face. Boom. Now I have the perimeter template for a frame. And I can go ahead and get rid of some of that. Before I do that, let me do this. I'm gonna go ahead. Missed something here. Ah, bear with me, bear with me, bear with me. Caught up in a step here that didn't close some things off. I'm going to leave this one solid because that has worked on other window frames. Yeah, reflip my faces here. Because this gives me a nice solid piece. I don't have to worry about the draining because I got all these openings in the window now that I'm not worried so much about all this resin draining because it's naturally already doing it with less to print. So now remember, on the brick pieces, we're adding 0.6 with our brickwork. So we want to go ahead and push pull this frame up 0.6 more. And that'll get us the same as my original 1.6. Yeah, 1.6. So that's basically a perimeter window frame. If you want to do like a picture window, that's it. But we want to bisect this right down the middle, and then we're going to put a horizontal in here as kind of our typical. So I'm going to come down here, grab the middle. I'm on the red axis. It's going to close off that bottom geometry. That's fine. Tape measure tool. We want to offset this 0.25. 0.25. We're going to come to the bottom, and we're going to close off this geometry before we extrude it this mullion up, because we're going to do a couple things here. Because remember, this is following along a beveled piece here in this particular section. Erase my guidelines. So now I'm good. I'm gonna go ahead and erase these so we can see as we do this work. So I want to push pull this all the way to the top. That's my reverse the faces first, then push pull this all the way to the top. But we don't need mullions that are that thick. We need them at the outside edge to hide the brick and just how these windows work. Even though the frames would generally be thinner, this is just how these inserts from the back work. You end up with a foot, I don't know what it is, 8 inches thick, 3.2. So almost a foot, 11 inches deep on your window frames, and it's going to pull it about 2 inches short of the face of the modular brick walls, which actually is a good thing. But we don't want these this thick on the back. But I want to close this off before I push and pull this. You can see this was 1.2, right? And we're 3.2. So we want to push this up 2 millimeters. Now we have the window frame kind of set. It gives it a little bit more realism, being a little bit thinner. Can't delete that one. So that one's going to be different. So if I hit, I'm going to leave that one there for now because that's right on the apex of that. But this is flat down here, so I can erase this. So that's the verticals are set. So the next one really is more about balance and where you want to place your horizontals. Some of the older windows would have a clear story type structure, which is how these were set up. Some would have multiple horizontals. We're just going to do one for right now. And if we look at this, our original one here was set at 12.25. But these don't necessarily line up. The sills line up in the DPM modules, but the head condition is just slightly off. So maybe what we do is we go ahead and we say, well, I like that point there. So I'm just, from a reference point, I'm just going to come ahead and go ahead and pull this straight across, closes off our model a little bit. That's all right. I'm going to use my tape measure tool, offset that 0.5. That way I know where that line needs to cross. Let me just do some cleanup here before I get started. And notice the ones I'm not deleting. All right, because we want to pull these down flush with the bottom of this. So push pull, hit control, and that will snap to the bottom. The control just creates a solid. So we just want to reverse that face when we're done. We're still in the push pull command. So grab that face, control, and align with the bottom, reverse that face. Now we can come in, just clean up these lines we don't need. And you're done. That is a custom window that has some consistency with the first series that I set up. It's a simple 4-light window. These end up being in scale. This opening is 20 divided by 3.5. So let's check real quick. 20.6 divided by 3.5. So those are just shy of 6 foot tall pieces of glass, and 1 foot 8 inches, so 20 inches wide. So as I get in and develop more window options, I'll get a little bit more specific with some things. But the original I think has, well, I know it has a split right down the middle, and so maybe just for kicks, let's do this. Let's go ahead and copy this line so that if you did put two of these modular walls side by side, your mullions would line up, which is, I mean, that's how we work as architects. Everything's about lining stuff up. I just attention to detail, creating some symmetry and alignment, repetition, pattern, all that kind of stuff. Those are architectural design things. So it's, I actually try and follow the same guidelines that I use as an architect when I'm developing some of these models. I think it adds a little bit more realism when you can look and see that things are aligning and someone paid attention to how this stuff was set up versus just randomly creating things. So, oh, that looks good. Well, I like things to make sense and then line up. So in this particular case, now we've got two horizontals. So that's a 6-pane window. That horizontal lines up with the horizontal in the full arch top, has some consistency. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this. You're good. You can see the bottom. I'm going to clean up a little bit more here. I don't do anything special with like a landing pad for supports on these particular models. Again, I got that whole perimeter where I'm going to load up with supports, and then I place some light supports in here and load these up with tree-like structure. That I think probably I'll go through that in a completely separate video on how I design and detail windows specifically for supports. But this at least gives you a real quick idea on how I set up my windows and some of the tolerance, 0.5 millimeters wide, 1.2 millimeters deep, and gives you an idea of what I use, and that gets us some pretty clean detail when we print these out. So I hope that helps on the windows. Next thing we'll do is I'll jump in real quick, run some stuff through 3D Builder. So let me get that other file opened back up and we'll go from there. All right, guys, I've got the original brick rectangular insert file open. We're going to go ahead and we're going to export this as a 3D file. Export 3D model. I'm going to drop it into the rectangular files folder. It's creating an STL. Export. All right, that's done. So now I want to come back over, open up that file, open this up. This is going to launch 3D Builder. And now immediately before I rotate or do anything, you can see I've got these dark faces. Those are flipped faces, or what's called flipped normals. In the model, they didn't show up as reversed, the darker blue like the back. But when you flip a group, it will automatically flip these normals in the STL file. It's just an inherent hurdle with SketchUp, and there's a few other programs that this happens with as well. So what you want to do is you want to import the model, click to repair it, and you'll watch them flip. They all flipped back. So now this is a normal STL file. Shouldn't have any issues with how this thing prints, but you need to save it. So File, Save As, change it to STL. You want to open up your folder. That's the one we want. Save. Yes, we want to replace it. Done. That's all you need to do. Close out of that. Your ST file is now a clean file. And what you can do is you can jump in, and we'll do that with Lychee Slicer next. So give me a second. We'll switch over and get that set up. All right, so I'm over here in Lychee Slicer. I use the Pro version. It's worth it to me. I have not had any issues whatsoever. So we're going to add our file here. It's the one we just created. Open that up, drops it on the build plate. No need to rotate or do anything with that on the build plate, but we do want to rotate that along, select it, rotate it along the red, which is going to be 45. Nope, sorry, green. Pay attention to what I'm doing. Right, so remember we talked in the SketchUp model that this was the bottom attached to the build plate. This is the top that's going to be draining. And when we look at all those pieces, all those edges that we created are going to slope off, and that resin is going to drain down. So we're going to click this. We're going to go to supports, and I'm going to support this thing for you. So, but first thing I need to do is raise this up off the bed. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 millimeters up off the bed. I'm going to use heavy supports, and you'll see that my settings for these particular models are right here in this corner. So copy them if you want to. This is what I know works for me, and you'll be able to see where I place my heavy supports on a model this size. So first thing I want to do is just drop these in here. I'm going to put them on this bottom edge. 1, 2, right there at the outside. 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, you remember when I said I had these landings? Okay, this is where I'm going to drop 2 more, and then I develop the trees off of this. I just hit this edge right here. 1, and that one right there. It's not an island, but it's out at the outside edge, so resin's going to print. The resin is printing basically where that white is, so it's going to print all the way at the edge. I anchor that outside edge, which is the main point of this. Now I'm done with heavies. There's no other heavies that need to be placed on these models. So I come over, I select medium, and again, you see my tip diameter drops, the tip length drops, the diameter of the post drops, and this is where we get in and I start adding some additional supports. So what we'll do, we're going to come in, select our model, and the first one I'm going to drop is going to be just below where the anchor is on that landing pad. I'm going to hit Alt, grab it, and I'm going to tie it back to there. So that one gets anchored right back to there. I use that white line to line things up. Same thing on this side, Alt, back to there. So those are, as you can see, those are going to print off the platform. And all this prints just fine. It works great. So then the next one is developing this tree of supports for the middle section. Those will all get tied back to this main primary support. So what I do is I come in, and again, same thing. But I'm gonna drop this one. Let's say right here, because I'm gonna line 3 of them up. So Alt, there, Alt, there. And you basically see I'm just kind of creating branches on a tree here, and I'm lining them up. That's important. This is one of the things I think people don't truly understand about how the supports work. If you have one support here, and then a random support up here, and then another random support over here, yes, they're all grabbing the model, but the surface area is fluctuating a little bit as this model builds, and the weight of the resin is increasing the more you print. So if you just line your supports up randomly, you're expecting that support in way too many instances to try and carry the weight and support of too much material. If you line them up like this, now I'm saying I've got 3 supports that anchor this model at this particular height of the model. So the force pull on the model stays consistent as it goes up, and it's not being changed by supports in different locations. It's just something that I've learned increases the success rate of my supports. And so now with these, I'm gonna do these all the same. I'm gonna use that anchor point right there. Alt, drop it down. Let's go ahead and drop one out here at this corner. Alt, just drop it in there. And I'm gonna drop one right here in the middle of that piece, right there. Alt, I'm just gonna tack it to that. So support on top of support, that'll print just fine. So again, see, don't have a big mess on the bottom, keeping my supports clean, and these will all print and hold on to this model and keep everything aligned beautifully. Now this one, I am gonna go ahead and just drop one out here to the outside edge, and here to the outside edge, because by the time we get to this point in the model, the weight of the resin has increased a little bit. I wanna add just a little bit more stability with an anchor to the build plate. So this just works well. And then I tend to crisscross support sometimes, but in this time in creating the tree, what I'm gonna do here is we'll go with one here. Again, I'm gonna line them up. There. There. So now I'm separating the load is being pulled from this anchor point and this anchor point for just these 2. I've got 2 pull on a big support here. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the rest of these on the tree, outside corner here, pull them down here. 1, 2. Oh, don't like that one. 3. So lots of good support anchor points there, and that's a fully supported model ready to be printed. Won't warp, won't during the print, won't warp during curing, stays nice and flat during the prints. And that's the key is figuring out how many do you need across the bottom. More is better. Guys, it's not worth trying to skimp on your supports. They're just, the resin amount isn't significant enough, and while this looks like there's certainly more resin in the supports than there is the brick model, I'd rather them all be successful than having them fail. It's not worth it to me to try and see how thin I can get supports and have things still work. I've got a system, this works. You can see what my medium supports are. Go back in the video, see where I have my heavy supports are, but this basically takes care of supports. I'll go ahead and save the scene. We're just going to keep this. It's in the DPM rectangle files. I'll keep this. It'll put LYS. It saves everything in here. So if I want to come back and modify this one, I can change supports if for some reason things were going to fail, but they won't. So I'll load this plate up with 12, and then I'll kick things off to get a print done, and I'll post up some of the prints here in a second as soon as I get this done. But for the most part, that's it. I've gone through basically how to set everything up, from starting with a template to developing a couple of options, including a window, coming in or exporting into 3D Builder, correcting your STL file, getting in and setting up things to support for a 3D print in a resin printer. I'm not going to go through printer settings and that kind of stuff in this video. I'll save that for a different time and go printer specific based on that. But I hope this stuff was helpful. If you got any comments, questions, tips, tricks of your own in SketchUp, please don't hesitate to drop them in the comments below. Would love to hear if there's quicker, faster ways to do stuff than what I've shown in this video. And certainly, check out the links, and what I have below for my online shop, my Facebook page. Check out some of the other videos where I go through and I cover some of the other 3D printing guidelines. But again, thanks for tuning into the video, guys. Greatly appreciate the support that you're throwing at my way. So until next time, happy modeling.